Hello and welcome to this quick tutorial. I'm just going to run through what we have here. So we have a very super basic sort of Star Wars-esque trench run. So and what we're interested in is sort of building on what we did in class. So let me save this scene, and so this is where we were, and we were looking at distance, so working at the distance between two objects and then having a behavior based on the distance. So what we've got here is we've got a player. Now the player is not what we used in the previous scene. It's not a rigid body, it's not one of these prefabs. It is very simply a camera. So you can see its characteristics here. I've turned the background to black and solid color, and inside it it's got this really crude mesh that was made in Blender, and that's it there. So that's the mesh. I've made this one, although I think I have issues with this one because I think I rotated it here by mistake. But anyway, that's the turret we're going to use. You can see they're pointing up here, but when we press play they'll look the right way. And then this is my trench. So I just made it, it's a very basic mesh, but a mirror modifier and an array modifier on it. I also put a solidify modifier on it as well to stop the light passing through parts of it. So yeah, so all fairly simple and basic. And when we press play, so our character, we can fly. We do have collision, and our bad guys are shooting at us. They're only shooting at us within a certain range. So let's have a quick look at that. So let's take a guy there. So I'm going to press play and let the character fly down, and you'll see. So the turret fires at me, fires again, and then once I get out of range, it stops firing. Now it's still going to look at me as I go up into the air, so the mouse look is still active. And if I were to fly back down the trench, it'll fire at me once I get in range. And there we go. And it's firing again. Okay. So how do we do that? And I have to add a script to my bullets to make them delete themselves. So let's just have a very quick look at the scripts we're using here. So there is a very simple script here on the X-wing, or the if we want to call it that, the player, the camera. It basically says I've got a speed of 2 and then move forward on Z by that speed. So this is just sort of so the player, the X-wing, is as in the original arcade game of Trench Run, is constantly moving. So there's no, I don't have to press a button to move. It's just always moving. And then we've got this script here, which is turret control. So let's have a quick look at that. So I've got my range, as I've used before, and down here I'm saying if the distance between two objects, and we'll look at them in a minute, is smaller than the range, do something. I have to declare my player, because that's going to be my target. So down here I'm saying transform that look at player. And then I've got these two variables here. They're both floats, and they're used for my rate of fire. So and we'll have a look at how that works in a minute. I've got my bullet that I'm going to fire, so I'm going to fire a projectile using the instantiate command. My bullet speed, and then the point at which the place where the bullet is instantiated from. So we'll very quickly just run through this here. So this is when the conditions are correct, make a new game object called bullet, and that will be the bullet prefab that we have up here, our bullet object, and then we will add it. The position will be the fire point position and fire point rotation, and then we're going to take this object here, this bullet, and give it a velocity, and the velocity is transformed at forward, so forward on its z-axis, times the bullet speed, which we should probably multiply by 10 with delta time. Anyway, we shall not worry about that now. So rate of fire, let's have a quick look at rate of fire. So I'm saying here, if the distance is correct, that's the first clause, and then if time, now time is the real time, meaning, if it's 3 minutes past 6. So it's the real time, and it's actually the real time in the game, as opposed to in the real world, but because you might have a different, your computer might have a different clock, but so it's time. It's not tied to your frame rate. And I'm saying if time, so from when I start the game, is bigger than this number here. Now at the beginning of the game, this number here is 2. So when you press play, the non-player characters that have the script on them will not fire for the first 2 seconds, but then time in the game will go past the value of 2, and therefore this condition is met, so they will fire, and that's what we've just looked at here. And then what we're saying is next fire, so this number here that time has to be bigger than, is time plus the fire rate. So if you can imagine, this has got a value of 2, let's say it's got a value of 3, so 3 seconds have passed, 3 is bigger than 2, so it's going to fire. And now I'm saying next fire is this, which is now 3 plus the fire rate is 2, so 3 plus 2 is 5, so this number now becomes 5. So it's going to fire when it's bigger than 2, and then we've got the 3, so the next time it's going to fire is when it gets to 4, and then 6, and then 8. So basically this number here is the frequency of fire, because we're adding it to time. So if that was set to 5, this would fire every 5 seconds. If this was set to, fire rate was set to 10, we'd fire every 10 seconds. So this number here now becomes the fire rate of our non-player character. So let's go have a look at that in practice. So when I look at my turrets, it's got a range of 10. The object it's going to look at is the player, so we've dragged and dropped the player from up here into this slot here. Next fire is set to 2, fire rate is set to 2. Bullet is a bullet prefab I've made, which is very simple. It's just a cube. I have to put a script on it saying destroy the bullet, and the bullet speed, and then the fire point. And the fire point is this here. So if it's an empty at the end of the turret. So let's take this turret here. We're going to decrease its fire rate. Instead of 2, we'll say 0.2. So it should fire 5 times every second. So let's see if our script works. So let's press fire, and this one should fire like below once I'm in range. But once I go out of range, it'll stop. Now if I turn around and come back, it should start firing again, and firing a lot. Okay, so that is rate of fire. Rate of fire is quite straightforward, and it's a little play with, you're saying, know what time it is now, and then we're adding a number to that time, and then when we exceed that new number, we fire. Okay, so just wanted to show you that for now, and this is what we're going to do in class tomorrow.